First of all, I want to address why you're all here. And the reason that you're all here is because you know that the landscape is shifting, right? The gaming landscape is completely different to what it was like 10 plus years ago. And even in the last 5 years, even in the last 3 years, and then even in the last year with COVID, there have been these massive growth in who's gaming and sort of the scope of what gaming can be. So what do I mean by this growth? There are people gaming from infancy. I know this, I said that I have been gaming since I was 5. Well, it's not uncommon for someone to pick up their first game at like 2 or 3 years old now. Basically, as soon as your hand can grab a touch screen, you can game. And a lot of people do. There are also record-breaking numbers of global events being attended by people in virtual spaces. And I think Jordan will take you through a little bit more of that as well. But we're talking about like concerts that have numbers of people attending in the millions, places like numbers that there's no stadium on earth that can hold, are being held in Fortnite and Roblox. And then finally, gaming as a hobby, as I'm sure you've realized, has seen a massive cultural shift. So the way that people are interacting with games and what their expectations are of gaming and the culture around gaming is completely different. And we'll get into a lot of that detail as well. So despite this, right, despite all these sweeping changes, the reason that we have to have a webinar about this in the first place is because a lot of people are actually still struggling to harness and to tap into this new market, because there is an enormous new amount of market share that's up for grabs. But people aren't quite sure how to go about doing it. And so that's why we put this together. So let's actually just touch on that for a moment. So why are businesses slow to change? Like, what is so scary about doing it? I think I want to say that a lot of people seem to be in this position. And I'll go through a few examples today of businesses that are doing quite well and moving pretty quickly into the new frontier. But I think it's worth going through some of these main reasons. This is what I hear all the time in my consulting work. So first of all, people are very comfortable marketing to the original, like, core stereotypical gamer. And that's because it still works, right? So let's be really clear. There is and has and always will be a core group of gamers who are super dedicated, and they are like your typical guy you imagine when you think of a gamer. Maybe they look a little bit like me, right? And the stuff that you can do for them that will always work. That is just a finite opportunity in comparison to what's emerging. And that's the problem, right? So we should still market to those people, but what about everybody else? And that's where the opportunity is. The other thing I hear is that it's expensive or resource intensive to adjust your business offer. That can be true, but today I'm going to go through a couple of ways that you can test things, and it's not going to be too resource expensive. And you should be able to learn a lot about where your business stands and what you can do. The other thing I hear is that it's difficult to find and talk to new audiences. Definitely a common question that I saw on the form for this webinar today from you guys was not being sure what platforms you should be on. I think, well, we'll go through it, but I'm not going to recommend platforms to you. I'm going to show you how you can decide what platforms are best for you and what order you want to probably start trying to do them in. So I'll just show you my methodology for doing that. And then finally, people are scared of hurting their brand if they don't nail it. And I think that there's a little bit of reason to that. So this is an example of something that didn't go quite well. I think there might be someone from Sony in attendance, actually, so no hard feelings. This is also pretty old, just for everybody else. I'm not saying that Sony are putting out campaigns like this right now. This is probably over 10 years old. But I think, this still does show up as an example campaign of something that didn't quite hit the mark, right? Nobody wants to be like this. Nobody wants to try and fail to talk to Gen Z or Gen Alpha, for example. And so, to be clear, something that we are going to go through today as well is like, what is the secret sauce? Like, how do you actually talk to them, and what's the best way to talk to them without having some sort of situation like this?